Okay, Chip. Well, you're an audience of one right now, so feel free to ask as many questions as you want.
Well, so my game it really unraveled near the end. I'm sure I made plenty of mistakes early on that you may be able to find, but essentially what happened was I was kind of hanging in there with Howard until late middle game, and then he started to cut my groups apart because I just had left too many cutting points in the center of the board. So kind of my struggle, I think, was a lot of the reasons why I think I was leaving cutting points is that I was just racing as fast as I could to try to keep up with him or stay out in front of him as we raced into the middle. I was just trying to capture as much territory as I could, but then he was able to come back and slice me up. So
sure. Well, let's take a look at it. So this was you were playing black and Howard playing white.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's take a look. Yep, everything looks good so far. No real comments. White should probably exchange the Atari first here. This is probably a little bit more typical. Black will get the outside. White will, usually just play elsewhere. Maybe something like this might happen. So black gets a little bit of a little bit of outward influence. White gets the territory in the corner. This move at c5 is also very common. I would say this is probably the most common variation you'll see. What did white play in the game? White ended up extending down. This is playable, but I think it does leave a little bit of that weakness at d3 after black plays at d5. So not necessarily the best variation, I'd say. But relatively small mistakes, not a huge deal. Although this is a very nice position for black, which is why I think that this Atari first is really important. After white extends here, black protects. This is just super strong position. White's territory here is pretty small. This is maybe a little bit of a questionable move because black is, again, as we mentioned, super strong here. There's no way this group is going to die, which means that if anything, black's going to become under attack here. So, maybe white's going to come under attack because maybe black doesn't play this move now, but later on, black can attack the I shape of both this group and this group. So I think this move is pretty unreasonable for white to play. If I were white in this position, I would much rather just play the open corner. So it looks like this happened in the game. This is fine. It's not quite clear yet which direction you'd want to attack. So I might be a little bit more inclined to put a bit more pressure on these two stones, with the idea being that if my opponent were to kick here and kind of get shaped for the corner, you can attack this stone very severely. This would be the first thing that comes to my mind. Obviously, white can jump out here, but if white jumps out here, you get to put a lot more pressure on these two stones in the upper left corner. But again, that's the advantage of having the super thick black group down here, is that you can attack right away. So again, probably part of the reason why I like this c12 move more than c10 is the instinct that I would have for black would be to play here. Now, the reason for that is I want to keep white disconnected. Right. As soon as I play here, white's connected up. Now I've reduced the territory over here, but I have no attack left over, right? This group's already connected up to over here. Now black is a little bit weaker. So I would probably rather have the stone, if we're going to play the exact same variation, I would rather have my stones here so I can better attack this group in the corner, right? You're going to end up coming back here anyway, right? Yeah, unfortunately, it's still like, there's even with white getting an extra move or two here, black is still alive, right? This, maybe black just has to play here, but no issues with living. It's going to live small certainly, but black's perfectly alive. So all these extra moves here may be a little questionable. So look, this is what happened in the game. So this was a mistake for black. So this is going to end up being a fake eye. So when white plays here, white is threatening to kill this group, right?
Gotcha. I should
If
have
black
played
plays here,
B6 right away.
yeah, there's still quite a lot of Aji left over, because there are cutting points here.
Mhm.
So it's not 100% dead. I think that black would probably be able to live here, but I do think that blocking here is a mistake.
Yeah.
It's certainly not an eye. I think you'd be much better off just playing
Right.
here, and now you get to keep your 2 eyes here.
Yeah.
So it looks like you ended up living okay anyway.
Yeah, to fight my way out.
Yeah, so you were able to do just fine here. You're playing a lot of extra moves here. I don't think they're necessary. So you can Tanuki right now.
Mhm.
If white plays here, black Ataris, black takes, and black will kill these stones because
Yeah.
black still has 2 liberties here. So maybe a couple of Dame moves here, which would cost you the tempo of the game.
Yeah. Okay.
And so white ended up with Sente, which is obviously a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so this group, imagine if you Tanuki now and you played here, how much how in trouble these 2 stones would be, right?
Right.
So just being mindful of liberties is really going to help out.
Okay.
This move by white is probably a little questionable. This is the shape move for black, this C15 stone. If white plays and tries to cut through, black cuts, white's going to connect, and now black can cut off these stones from these stones, right? Now, of course, after this, white can play here, but this is not exactly a great result for white. Black has taken the corner, and white's going to be left with a little bit of a floating group.
Okay.
So jumping here is probably a little bit questionable. And you might say, okay, well, what if white plays something like this? Even this has its own brand of weakness.
Okay.
You know, something like this is going to happen. White's still going to be disconnected here.
Okay.
So this move at C15 is a really good shape to know, and occurs all the time when white's played a knight's move and then does a diagonal move in the corner.
Okay.
This is probably a little bit too small. Again, we've talked about the weakness of this group, so rather than attacking, rather than trying to seal it in and let white get points, we'd rather be focusing on C15. But even if C15 wasn't there, even if white already had an extra move here, I'd still rather focus on this corner of the board. I'm not going to be able to make that much territory here, and white is, assuming that white protects here, white's going to get quite a lot of territory. There's no more attack on this group. This stone at G15 is maybe a little bit questionable now.
Okay.
And so I think white rightly played away.
Yeah. Okay.
So the pincer's fine. I know you didn't play it, but do you think this move was good, bad? What were your thoughts on it?
You mean when he went to Q18?
Yeah.
I was surprised by it. I thought he'd go to the 3-3 and try to get life on the inside of the corner after I played the pincer.
Yeah, and that's the exact right variation. But what would you say is wrong with Q18?
I mean, he's playing on the second line, so there's not a lot of room to get life. And even if he attached, he could attach against my 4/4 stone, or just try to move out into the middle and not get trapped.
So I think the kind of the sequence we would expect from here is something like this, right?
Yeah.
Now maybe let's look at it slightly differently. So this was a white approach, black. It looks very similar to a variation I think we all know. Knight's move on the 4/4, jump, Kama 3/3. We've kind of seen this variation before, but let's take it apart. Let's do something a little bit different. Imagine this was the variation. Now you never see white play away, because if that happens, black's going to pincer. Right? That's the exact same variation that we saw in the game, and then white plays here. And this is obviously a really poor variation for white in this situation, because white has no room to make 2 eyes, and white's going to be running for its life. And as this is happening, black is going to be making territory on either the left or the right side. So going back and looking at it in the game, we can say pretty clearly that coming into the corner at Q18 is going to end up in a result that we're not going to be happy about. Because it's going to look exactly the same. Black getting territory on this side, and white having kind of just a floating group here that's not really doing much.
Yeah.
I think maybe the double Hane might be a little bit too aggressive. It's hard to say that it's going to be a particularly bad result, but you're not really hurt if white it continues to extend here, because that means you get to very cleanly map out territory over here, and white's not really getting anything with this wall because of how strong this black group is over here.
Okay.
If you play here, white's going to Atari, black's going to play here, and now black's going to have to come back and play here, which means that white can get Sentai.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely, white cannot ignore this. This is absolutely huge. White can take, and you know, there's probably a world in which black can try to kill, but even if black doesn't try to kill and just, you know, protects on the outside, white is not happy here. White is so penned in. This stone is going to get put under severe attack. This Tanuki right now is just not reasonable.
Okay.
Black is way too strong in this area, and white is much too weak in this area for white to play right now.
Okay.
So is there anything, what would you, looking at this move, do you think you would play it now after after hearing what I've said, right? Probably
Right.
not, because we know that this group is strong. We know that these moves
Mhm.
are forcing on the white group in the corner, right?
Yeah.
And so would you play here now? Probably not. You'd rather push your opponent into your influence. And so you're going to take away the eye space for this group, and now you get to attack these two stones. And so you'll get compensation probably somewhere over here, or maybe a better attack down here by attacking these two stones.
Okay.
So being mindful of the fact that you actually have a really strong position here despite the cut means that you don't necessarily need to play here.
Right.
Because now white gets to kind of extend very comfortably over here.
Yeah.
And then imagine if you did this exchange now. Now this move looks a little silly.
Right.
Not terrible, but you know, a little bit slow.
Yeah.
This move by white is probably a little bit slow. The typical move you'll see here is white will attach at P2, black will play here, white will play here, and then black will play the jumping move here. The problem with this move at O2 is it doesn't really put any pressure on the group. At least when you play P2, if black were to play away, you can very easily just clamp at R2 and take away some of the corner.
Okay.
You know, if black can connect and then white takes away corner. If white plays here, there's some cutting points that black's gonna have to deal with. White will take away the corner, some of the outside. So, but again, you know, there's no follow up to O2.
Okay.
I think white would probably be better off. Well, we definitely want to Atari here. That's step one. Definitely Atari first. Whatever we do here, we want to Atari first. Whether we want to try to kill or whether we want to just connect and protect the weakness here, we want to Atari first, because what we don't want to have happen is we connect here and then white gets to extend out.
Yeah.
Because now white's going to have a little bit more eye space in the corner. It's further out into the center. So this would be no good for black. So what happened in the game? Black played here and then white played here. This is again, white's too aggressive right now. You know, all black needs to do is play here and this group is dead.
Yeah.
I don't even know if, yeah, I think it's just locally dead. You don't need to even add an extra move. Even if after white 4, like black plays here, if white tries to live here, you take away the eye. So, you know, any move that white plays that's not in this area is just is unreasonable.
Okay.
So similarly, every move you should be playing should be that Atari at N15 or something like that. So separate from the weakness at the top, what do we think we're accomplishing with this move?
Well, I think I wasn't thinking about the fact they already have a diagonal connection coming out there at Q7. So I was trying to keep him pressed flat so that he couldn't capture that entire middle side and start moving out to the center from there. But again, when I played at Q9, in retrospect, I wasn't even thinking about the fact he already had the diagonal connection at Q7, so he's going to be able to make it out anyway.
Yeah, there are times where a move like this might be good, and
Mhm.
if in this instance maybe it is, maybe it isn't, right? But the idea being that you keep white penned in, white's not going to have an issue living here, but white's also not going to live very large, right? That's the
Yeah.
kind of idea by it. But unfortunately, playing here now, what basically happens is now white's fully connected here. There's no
Yeah.
Aji left over. It's fully connected and it's outside. So rather than peep here, I would probably focus on, I mean, obviously we have the weakness at C15. We
Mhm.
have this weakness at N15. I think that white might have a little bit more territory right now, but that's only because white is so much weaker elsewhere, right? White has two weak spots that it can potentially die at, right?
Okay.
So even though it might look like you're behind territory, you're actually pretty far ahead in my eyes.
Okay.
So again, allowing white to really solidify that territory here.
Yeah.
White could even consider pushing up here and trying to capture these two stones.
Mhm.
Maybe this is a little bit slow. This is the typical shape move, either this or this. You wouldn't necessarily want to play here because when black Ataris, it's very clear that this group is cut off.
Mhm.
Whereas in this situation, if you play something like this, and black still plays the same move, at least you're still connected, right? Obviously, there's different moves that black could play, but it's a little bit better. White's a little bit stronger here than it would have otherwise been. It seems like black's trying to build up center influence, but that's going to be really tough with this really strong white wall over here, these couple of stones here. In this type of situation where black has a lot of thickness, that's when you want to go on the attack. So that's why these moves at like N15 and C15 are so important right now, because this is the compensation that you get when you have a thick position that you get to attack. If you're not attacking with your thick position, then you're wasting it. And here you're not really attacking, you're trying to build up more influence in the center to get some amount of territory. And your thick position here is not going to, you're going to get maybe 10 or so points here, and that's not going to be worth the 15 or so zones you've used to build up the position, right? So again, white's kind of coming in, and this is the maybe the difficulty with trying to get center territory, is that all you need to do is break in from one side and it's almost all gone. Yep. Oh, and then once white gets this, the group in the upper right corner is almost alive. So you can still get, maybe now you're getting a little bit of nice territory in the center, and this is becoming a little bit nicer. But we had this great group to potentially kill, so it's unfortunate we've lost that.
Yeah.
Just a reminder for time, another couple of minutes.
Yep. Thanks. So I know I said that obviously after N15 the group is a lot stronger, but there is still some weaknesses here. Definitely something to be mindful of. White's not alive yet. If black ever, let's say something like this were to happen, black plays here, this is not a locally living group, right? So there's still quite a lot of Aji left, which means that for me, if I were white, I would be focusing on trying to live. And so I would be thinking of something like this. If black comes here, there's a little bit of a nice Tsuji here, where you can capture these two stones. If black comes on top, then now white can actually make a decent amount of territory at the lower side of the board. So I think L18 would be better than then K16 as what K16 is doing is just giving away territory and not actually helping this white group in the corner. I know you didn't play this move, but it's still helpful to know. And for you, what I would be thinking about right now is how can I attack this group? How can I figure out a way to get both N17 and N18, or at the very least one of them?
Yeah.
I think it's fine to just Hana here, to just connect underneath. I don't think you need to get fancy. Eventually, if you play this move, white's going to need to connect, and then you can push through here, right? So that's one way to kind of get rid of one of the eyes. So I think just playing very solidly is totally okay here. White still owes you moves. White's not in the free and clear yet.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a good point to stop. Obviously, white has a lot of territory at the bottom, but I think black has an attacking group here, an attacking group here. I would definitely give the advantage to black in this position. Okay. Any other questions on this or anything I've said so far?
No, it makes sense. I think that I could see where in those situations I really need to work on my mindset and not just be all defensive. It's unfortunately the way I tend to respond too many times in those situations. Yeah.
One thing that really does help is also counting to a certain degree, right? Just figuring out what the score is, because you can play a little bit more defensively if you're really far ahead. If you're behind, then you have to figure out, okay, well, I'm behind now. If I play a normal game, I won't win.
Yeah. Okay.
So even just having a rough estimate of like within 10 points is going to be super helpful.
Okay. I appreciate that.